How many languages will remain by 2100? Every 2 weeks, a language disappears. Today, there are more than 7,000 languages in the world. Over 40% of them are at risk of extinction. Of the 700 languages that have fallen silent throughout human history, more than 30% have become extinct in the past 60 years. Sometimes languages die out quickly, for instance, due to natural disasters or wars. This happened in El Salvador. Members of the indigenous Lenca and Cacaopera peoples abandoned their languages to avoid being identified as indigenous. This occurred after the massacre in 1932, when Salvadoran troops killed tens of thousands of primarily indigenous peasants to suppress an uprising. However, most languages die out gradually. When languages come into contact, the socioeconomic differences between their speakers often lead to linguistic inequality. The language of the ruling elite or the majority becomes more prestigious, opening the door to education, success, and prosperity. This marks the beginning of language shift, a gradual transition of a small ethnic group from its own language to the language of the majority. Researchers from the Australian National University analyzed thousands of languages to identify factors contributing to their extinction. It turned out that the loss of a local language is largely a result of school education, as the dominant languages taught in classrooms often overshadow indigenous languages. The second factor threatening small languages is the increase in road density in the area. Paradoxically, becoming familiar with a dying language and studying it can help preserve it. But at the same time, globalization and the influence of the larger world can accelerate the decline, suppression, and extinction of a smaller language. According to Australian scientists, if no action is taken, the number of endangered languages will increase fivefold in the next 80 years. By 2060, the number of extinct languages will triple. By the end of the century, we may lose more than 20% of all languages in the world. In the next 40 years, languages on the west coast of North America, in Central America, West Africa, and Northern Australia will disappear rapidly. When a language is lost or sleeps, as they say about languages no longer spoken, an important part of human cultural diversity is lost. Is anything being done to preserve languages? Many of the languages predicted to be lost this century are still spoken fluently by their speakers. The United Nations declared 2022-2032 the International Decade of Indigenous Languages. During this time, the global community is expected to actively engage in addressing the critical issue of language loss. Efforts are being made in several directions. Technology. There are special websites and apps that help people learn rare languages. The Duolingo app introduces users to endangered languages like Navajo or Hawaiian. Iwaija app allows users to explore Iwaija, an indigenous Australian language spoken by just over 150 people. Initiative-bearing speakers of small languages are forming communities on social media, creating YouTube channels, and running blogs to popularize endangered languages, find like-minded individuals, and connect with speakers worldwide. Education. At first glance, education only exacerbates the effects of globalization and accelerates the process of language extinction. But it is merely a tool that can be used not only to introduce new generations to endangered languages, but even to revive dead ones, as was the case with Hebrew, Cornish, and Manx. Linguists often point to Welsh as a successful example of reviving a once-fading language. The government deliberately pushed it out of use among the residents of Wales, a part of the United Kingdom. In 1800, it was the de facto main language in much of the region. However, by the early 1900s, less than half of the population spoke it. During the Victorian era, several popular uprisings took place in Wales, and some members of Parliament attributed this in part to the preservation of the Welsh language. The school system excluded Welsh from the curriculum, and students who spoke their native language were punished. By 1991, only 18.7% of the country's population spoke Welsh. Since then, the situation has improved thanks to similarly coordinated government efforts, but now focused on preserving the language. Welsh is once again recognized as an official language, studied by all Welsh students, and some schools in the region even teach lessons in Welsh. Currently, about 870,000 people speak it, nearly a third of Wales' population. For comparison, in 2011, only 583,000 people spoke Welsh, and in 1993, just 133,000 Welsh people did. Grant programs for supporting small languages. Grants from the Arctic Development Project Office support initiatives aimed at preserving the small languages of the Arctic zone. The Enets Literacy Project, through which activists aim to document the unwritten Enets language. Hans Rausing Endangered Languages Project. The Hans Rausing Endangered Languages Project, a large fund with substantial funding. In its 10 years of existence, the fund has allocated about £20 million to support projects preserving endangered languages worldwide. The geographic scope of the projects is not limited. Kenyan, Indonesian, and Eastern European researchers are among the grant recipients. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to our channel and remember, the best way to predict your future is to create it.